Hi, folks. Everybody hear me okay? Yep, yep. So my name's John McGuire from a company called Pulsion Technology. So I'm here today to talk about the kind of rather dramatic title of a presentation called Houston, We Have a Problem. And it's really about probably some of the endemic problems we have within digital transformation and software delivery. So basically my background is in software delivery. So I'm a software engineer. This is the first machine I worked on when I went to university back in the 80s, Commodore PET. So I've got 37 years of what I'd like to class as being professional developer experience. Some people might argue, but I would say it's professional developer experience. I've worked on literally hundreds of projects over that time. I've worked with hundreds of developers, some really good, some just good. I've worked on embedded systems. I've worked in desktop systems. I've worked in what used to be known as client server. I've worked in mobile. I've worked in cloud, and I've done machine learning. So I've got a lot of experience over this. And I worked in small projects for small startups, as well as large multi-million-pound projects for people at financial services, etc. And I would say, from my background, Father, I have sinned. I have had failure on projects before. I have seen lots of failure. I've had success, and I've had overruns. So really what the presentation is about is to try and impart some of that, in inverted commas, wisdom, but also just to give you some ideas of the common areas that I see where failure happens. But I don't want you just to take my view on it, because there's some stats in here to back up that. So this is a Gartner report that says, by any definition, the failure rate of IT projects is appalling. And it is. It really is appalling. People deliver things, but they deliver things late. So many projects fail. But of course, success has many fathers. Failure is an orphan, famous quote. And I get a lot of CVs, but what I've never seen in a CV is a statement here. And it says, at my previous company, I was responsible for ensuring project delivery on time and to budget. I delivered 2 projects on time and to budget. 3 projects overran by an average of 33%, and 1 project completely failed. I feel it would be a great asset to your company. So I've never seen this, but actually, that statement is based on the facts of delivery in IT projects. So roughly 2 projects will be on time and to budget. Roughly 3 projects, somewhat 60% would be overrun, and that overrun of 33% is the average overrun on an IT project. So apparently 1 in 6 is a 200% overrun, and the 1 project will completely fail. But of course, nobody washes their dirty linen in public. But there is one group that unfortunately has to. So I will say, warning, may contain content that may upset taxpayers and contain some scenes of a statistical nature. So we have the public sector IT projects, and I'm really not picking on the public sector here. It's just these are very public. The clues in the public sector, they have to answer to us, the general public. They are audited, etc. So these are easily researchable. So if you look at, this is a farm project for managing grants for the farmers in Scotland. So the original budget was 102 million to manage grants for farmers. Seems a lot of money, but hey-ho. It ended up costing 178 million. They had to reduce the scope of the project to get it in at 178 million, and there were potential penalties from the EU for not delivering it on time. So huge overspend, a lot more money than they thought it was going to cost. There's then Police Scotland system. I did know somebody that worked on this, and they were There was within the management for this, and they told us that they went to India and saw 400 great developers working on this project. It was going to be fantastic. As soon as they said 400 developers were working on it, as somebody with experience of IT projects, 400 developers generally means it's going south. So this was a £46 million project. It was scrapped, but on the bright side, every cloud has a silver lining. They got a £25 million refund from the company that did this. Apparently, the big debate was that they didn't agree on requirements. The company said that they presented the solution to Police Scotland, but the Police Scotland said that wasn't true. So who knows? You don't argue with the police. The daddy of them all was a project that ended in 2011. So this was a £1 billion IT project. £11 billion IT project for the NHS. This was abandoned in 2011. And to put a waste of 11 billion in context, if you look across the river, whichever way the river is, there's the Queen Victoria Hospital, or Queen Elizabeth Hospital there. You could build 11 of those hospitals with the cost of this. So it's really important that we get things right, and we don't seem to be getting them right within the industry. According to the Boston Consulting Group, because I did a bit of research and it was quite shocking, according to the Boston Consulting Group, 70% of digital transformation projects fail. So that's one data point there. So that may be an outlier, except for the fact that McKinsey also produced another report that said 30% of digital transformation projects succeed. So that's pretty much the same figure, just presented in a different way by two different companies. Of course, you could say, what is the definition of failure? It's hard to say. Did you make your money back? Did the project get cancelled? No, nobody, I couldn't find any research on what that was. But basically, the project didn't meet its goals. So that's a shocking figure. So in order to really understand why are things going wrong, it's probably worth giving a refresher to anybody in the audience who's not familiar with the delivery of digital systems. Is anybody familiar with things like waterfall, agile, etc.? So the old ways that we developed, the way that I developed when I was a boy, really, was the way that just about every other engineering discipline delivers solutions. So you'd have your requirements for a system, you then design the system, you would then implement it, you would then test it, you would then go into a maintenance phase. It was pretty standard until a few years ago. It worked okay. There were certainly overruns, but people thought there was a better way, and they came up with an iterative method called agile. And agile here was supposed to be you kind of define the project, and then rather than waiting to the end to deliver the project, and that was one of the big problems of waterfall, you would iteratively deliver the project. So you do it in small cycles, and you show your stakeholders, your clients, as you go along. Typically, for example, for ourselves, we would typically show a system every 2 weeks so that we can make sure that we're on track and that we are actually delivering software. The big problem with waterfall was some people just wouldn't deliver, and some clients would, the first time they'd see the software would be a year after the software had been started and it was already off track. So the Agile Manifesto was developed by a group of developers who, and then Agile was kind of hijacked by consultants and taken off as a whole. I think they call it the Agile Industrial Complex now. But Agile is still probably the best way we have of delivering software. It's so good that 42% of projects are successful. So if you came to me and said, how likely is it that an Agile digital transformation project would be successful, it's less than the toss of a coin as to whether it's going to be successful. Of course, yet again, this is from a report by a company called the Standish Group, who are an American consultancy. They produce these figures yearly, so this is the 2020 report. So you can see they've said 42% of Agile successful, 47% challenged, which I presume means some sort of overrun, some sort of budget or timescale problem, and 11% of projects just failed. Yeah, I'm assuming no outcome, throw the software literally in the bin. Waterfall didn't have as good a success rate, 13%, 59% challenged, and 28%. And of course, I'm always skeptical of figures, so I always like to have two sets of data in order to check each against the other. There's a company called 6.6 who did a survey, and they said that 1 in 8, 12% of Agile projects failed completely. So if you compare that with 11% of the Standish Group, it's remarkably close for two separate data points, two separate surveys, effectively. So I kind of believe that figure of 11, 12% failure rate, as well as I also believe, from my experience, the challenge figure of 47%, because overruns are endemic. So we talked about public sector and some of the very public overruns, but I don't know the details of those projects, so I don't know what happened behind the scenes. I just can see the overruns, I can see the failures. So what I'll do is I'll give you a couple of examples of projects that I've been involved in, and really just to give you an idea of what is actually, what I thought had gone wrong, because I know a lot more about them. So in terms of this project, I won't name any clients because I can't. So this was an organization that has spent 10 million on a human resources system. They phoned me up and said, John, could you come in? You're a senior person. Could you come in and have a look at this project? Our contract project manager left 6 months ago. He told us when he left that we would have the project delivered within 6 weeks. It's now 6 months, and the development team cannot tell me when this will finish. So I went in, I had a look. First thing I asked is, can I see the requirements? Because I need to see, what the project is supposed to do. They handed me this thing that was masquerading as some sort of requirements document, the loosest requirements document probably I've ever seen. It said the system must be available in foreign languages, but it didn't actually specify what foreign languages the system would be available in, and that makes a difference. For those who do software development, it's doing Asian character sets, Chinese, Korean, etc. It's huge difference to the development versus doing Western English or German, French, whatever. So basically, the loosest requirement specs I'd ever seen. Spoke to the developers. Nobody really knew what they were doing. Nobody knew what they were delivering. They were reworking things because they had this cycle of speaking to the stakeholders, and the stakeholders saying, no, that's not what we want. They go back in and change it, and then say, well, it's still not kind of what we want. Spent 10 million. I looked at it and said, this is never going to deliver. Scrap the project. I thought I was being quite bold. I thought it's quite brave as a consultant to say that. They said, we can't scrap it. I said, okay, I get that, but why can't you scrap it? And they said, well, this is our second attempt at developing this. We already probably spent similar type money doing a version 1 of this. It failed, we scrapped it, and we tried again. So this was probably one of the worst projects, probably the worst project I've seen. For me, the cause of failure was really lack of clear requirements, goals, and pretty much poor stakeholder involvement. Stakeholders weren't really helping the dev team, but the dev team should have been stronger. Probably the project manager should have been stronger in stopping everything until they got good requirements. Second project, or one of the probably the next worst project that I've actually seen, was a project that ended up with an overrun of 500%. So this is a financial services system, probably maybe a couple of 100,000, probably ended up costing the equivalent of $1 million. This system was commissioned, fixed price, using Agile, using cloud technology. At the time, the team who developed it had a bit of inexperience of cloud, but knew some things about cloud, so weren't totally inexperienced. It was managed by an Agile project manager who kind of believed in very loose requirements at the start. We'll, kind of like we'll figure it out as we go along. But it was fixed price. It was a fixed price project. So effectively, what happened at the project manager, we started off the project. The client project manager thought it'd be good to get the client to write the use cases rather than software developers to write the use cases. So ended up clients wrote the use cases. No prototyping of the system was done, so there was nothing to show the clients what they were actually going to be getting. So the clients were reading the use cases. One client was reading the use cases thinking, I'm sure my colleagues will understand these use cases, but I don't. And the other person is saying, I don't really understand them, but I'm sure they understand them. The project got developed in an iterative way, but the amount of rework just cascaded. You had situations where nothing was actually defined. So you had one screen that had a bank account sort code validation being done to validate. And on another page, somebody picked up another agile ticket, and they were doing a completely different validation. Not only writing the same thing twice, but actually writing a completely different thing. So some things would pass a test on one side, and in another, an absolute disaster. It did eventually get delivered, but it was 500% overrun. Because of that overrun, really pretty poor requirements, probably inadequate analysis of those requirements, and certainly lack of prototyping there. Inexperienced team, but not incredibly inexperienced, and unfamiliar technology, but not totally unfamiliar technology. If you asked me to pick one, I would say poor requirements. I've seen people talk. There's a guy called Robert Martin. Don't know if anybody's heard of him. He's a kind of agile guru. He's one of the guys who sat in a room and came up with the Agile Manifesto. And he does a good presentation on the future of software development. And software development really underpins digital transformation. So he actually talks about developer experience as being a huge problem within the industry. He quoted something that said half of all engineers, software engineers, have less than 5 years experience. And it's quite difficult if you're going through projects. You really do learn. I'm not dissing anybody who's young and not got that experience, but it does take a while for you to get that experience of things that go wrong and things that can be missed in projects, and just generally having a bit of nous that it's not all just about writing code. It's not all just rosy. So this is Stack Overflow do a developer survey. That developer survey is done yearly, so this is 2021. So if you look at this, I think we have, doing my maths here, probably about 63% of devs have less than 10 years experience. If you look at this, there are 22% of doctors that have less than 10 years experience. So if you compare us with another profession, and I suppose doctors would say, we could kill our patients, though. Well, we can write systems that guide planes, so we can do it in hundreds. So we have a lot of inexperience within the industry, and we also within there we also have agile, which something I've seen. I don't know whether other people have seen it, but certainly what I've seen is what I'd call the abuse of agile. I'm not knocking agile. I'm not an old school waterfall type person. But what I'm saying is agile has been misused to take away the requirements capture part of projects. We've seen it internally with people coming in from other companies who have agile. The Agile Manifesto, if you ever read the Agile Manifesto, which is, the Agile's the best we have at the minute. The Agile Manifesto says something like working code before documentation. It doesn't say throw away the documentation. If anybody's used to a ticketing system within Agile, sometimes what you see is, people put tickets into something called Jira. It's like Post-it notes for somebody who's not experienced. But somebody comes along 3 years later to a project and said it was great, we developed it Agile. But it's like trying to put a film together with each line that each actor said just in a and a bunch of Post-it notes. So you have to determine the order and work out what happened. So people have used Agile as a way of, it certainly does reduce documentation, and you can keep documentation lean and mean, but it does get abused to a large extent, as far as I've seen. And you tend to think it's the people you know that are perhaps abusing it, but then you look out into the industry and you see all these figures, and you say, well, it can't be, because the stats say that something's wrong. And I think one of the big problems is requirements, certainly from the projects I've seen. Yet again, I don't like making a statement without having some sort of backup on here. And there's various stats. You can go and research it yourself. But really, a group called the Infotech Research Group said that of projects that failed, 70% failed due to requirements. So you're looking at requirements being a huge problem there. 50% of project rework is attributable to problems with requirements. That's my experience as well. When I read that, I'm like, yeah, I totally agree with it. So I would say everything depends on requirements. And when you look at projects being successful, an Agile project can be successful as long as you never look at the budget for it. Because the great thing about Agile is you perhaps don't have to estimate. And with waterfall, sometimes people have to estimate. But I read something on how to do fixed price Agile, if anybody knows Agile. And somebody online said, you can do fixed price Agile. It's great. All you do is reduce the scope. But that's like me going to a builder to say, please build me a house. How much will it be? And they say, it's going to be £150,000. And then when we run out of budget, they say, oh, we haven't finished it. We just de-scoped it all for you. It's probably not a very acceptable thing to do. So what I will say is requirements. You need good requirements to do good prototypes, to actually get stakeholders engaged, and I would encourage you to do that. You need good prototypes, good requirements to be able to estimate how much something's going to cost. You then need a budget, which is based on the estimates. You need timescales, which are based on the budget and how many people you've got available, and then you can get on to implementation. If you have bad requirements, it just cascades into a disaster from there. So I suppose our requirements journey at Pulsion, so we're a digital transformation company, great believer in delivering things. We do a lot of fixed price projects. We've done a lot of fixed price projects in the back. It's really important to survive as a company that we get it right when we do fixed price projects. We need to stay as close to budget as we can. So we looked at our project statistics, we looked at overruns, we looked at whatever, and we determined that the biggest opportunity for us internally was requirements. You see the stats, 70% of failed projects, bad requirements. Requirements is where it has to start. We also found that as we're taking on less experienced staff, they're picking up Agile, and effectively they're not capturing all the requirements. They forget things. Everybody's human. You forget things. If you've not got the experience, it's easy to forget things. So they weren't gathering requirements accurately, and they were forgetting requirements altogether. And there are some hidden requirements. When you develop a system, there's some hidden requirements, like some of the validation might not be specified. You also might not have thought of things like deployments to the cloud, all unit tests, etc. These are easy if you're inexperienced to forget about. So what we decided to do is we're using kind of Microsoft Word templates, Jira as a requirements management tool. It can kind of manage requirements, but Jira is just a listing tool, really. It's a electronic Post-it notes to some extent, and more than that. But we look to move away from a Microsoft Word templates, Jira, to our own application to structure requirement questions, because people weren't asking the same questions. When you just have something at lists, it's up to the individual who may be inexperienced to actually ask the questions. So what we did is we started to put together structured requirements so that all those questions got asked that had to be asked, and asked in a structured manner so that we forgot. And then we started to try and build it out from there. So we forget something, we add it to the tool. And the idea is that you might have a great business analyst, but if the business analyst leaves as the average tenure of people is something like 2 to 4 years in a software company. So if you've got a great person, the chances are they might be leaving in 2 to 4 years. If they just joined you, if they've been here 2 years, they might be leaving next week. So we look to capturing requirements consistently by effectively putting a structured process. And I think this is all about process. Process is not there for people who are experienced. People who are experienced and 10, 15, 20 years experience, they'll deliver software. They don't need a process. The process is there for people who are less experienced, who are just learning, who need some stabilizers, basically. So we put together a tool to capture requirements. We output them as kind of Word documents, but we decided that we could actually automatically produce wireframes because we're finding that Word documents don't get read. Clients, you say, how did the requirements look? Yeah, they're great, but only when they see the system or only when they see prototypes. So yet again, great believer in prototypes. So we then added basically rudimentary wireframes to the requirement system from there. Something we're currently evaluating internally, but we reckon that having a tool and automating the process, even just having a process, even without a tool, we get a 50% reduction in the time to actually capture requirements from engagement, putting the requirements together, asking the right questions. And we've got anecdotal evidence from our developers, speaking to our developers, and looking at requirement specs that we have before and requirement specs that we have after, that we're actually now capturing requirements that previously may have been missed there. So I suppose for lessons learned for us in terms of unsuccessful projects is poor requirements will lead to unsuccessful projects, especially in inexperienced teams. And perhaps unless you're Microsoft or Facebook or whatever, and probably even if you are them, you're probably not going to have experienced teams, completely experienced teams, because there's such a demand for digital skills. Prototyping definitely helps engage stakeholders. So if you want to be successful, absolutely put some sort of UI, if there is a UI to your software, put some sort of UI. It really, people notice things that they don't notice in projects or don't notice in documents. Agile methodology does not mean, I'm really keen on this one, agile methodology does not mean no upfront requirements. It might, if you have unlimited resources, unlimited money, or a really, really nice team that actually knows what they're doing, great, I think you can do that. But yet again, if you have a fixed budget, fixed cost, not unlimited money, then I would certainly encourage you to try and look at as much detail and requirements up front. Adding more process or automation to requirements capture can improve the consistency. We found that if you can do that, however you do it, then it's definitely something worth doing. And I would say that so much is dependent on requirements. It pays to improve this area of projects. It really, it's the foundation of projects. Everything goes wrong quite quickly if you don't get requirements right. We also have now taken that tool from internally. It's not ready for a full commercial release yet, but we have this tool that I talked about. It's called Requirement. We're using it internally. We're out there just trying to get more experience of people gathering requirements just to see what people think, because I really do think it's a big problem within the industry there. So you can sign up at recommend.com. You can have a go at it, free beta, try it. If it helps you, it helps you. If it doesn't help you, you can choose not to log in again. And really, that's it from me. So thanks for listening. But any questions? I think somebody's got a microphone. If there is anybody with a question.
Hi, John. Rob Doherty, IBI. Thanks for your chat. Just a quick question on lots about requirements and the experience of teams and the rest of it delivering. But what's your view on the experience and maturity of clients in accepting Agile, and how do you go about making sure that they're up to speed with it as you are?
I would say some clients love Agile if it's sold to them in the right way, and there's a good sell and there's a bad sell. I'd say the bad sell is, this is brilliant. You don't have to think about requirements up front. We're just going to start development, and they have an idea in their head. They're probably asking a salesperson, how much will this system cost? And somebody gives them a rough figure, kind of looks like that, and they then take that as being the figure that's actually going to be delivered with. So they then think, and I have seen projects fail with this, where the client thinks, this is great, it's agile, I can just change anything I like, and it'll just deliver. So always, I'm terrible for analogies, but it is a bit like being a builder, where you have the people, you're building an extension for somebody, and every time you go in, they get to change. You know, I don't like where that window is. Could you just move it over here while you're in? Builders couldn't survive like that. It's too much work. So those kind of clients love it until it goes south, and then start looking to sue people because wait a minute, I thought I could just change my mind, and I thought I had unlimited changes. At the other side, you also have clients who are really mature who say, we understand fixed price it's just, we're professional software developers ourselves, we understand this. Let's work agile, and they understand the scoping, de-scoping, the overruns that can happen within software. So I think it's two types. Generally, the first type is generally people, entrepreneurs who have a fixed budget, who want agile because they're going to have a meeting with somebody next week, and they want to change the software again. So it's hard to make clients understand. But I think once you do get them into the mindset of agile, it's great. But I'd still say make sure that people know what they're getting up front, because if you just let them wander about too much, it really, they can cause the project to fail themselves, and clients do. Yeah. Any others?
Hi. How much of the requirement issues you talk about, what split do you think it is between building the wrong thing, so the requirement's like the wrong priority, versus the requirement doesn't have the right sort of detail in it, and the builders, the people building it or testing it, don't know what it's meant to do? So
the biggest problems I've seen, certainly throughout my career, number one is people forgetting things. Clients, I forgot to tell you that this happens. I've also seen requirements where you get managers who say, I understand how my team works, I'll write the requirements. So they write the requirements. They're involved in all the workshops, they're involved in all the software. They haven't got the stakeholders who are actually using the requirements. You then almost release the software. It eventually gets to the people on the ground who are going to be using the software, and they say, oh, they don't know how we actually do our job. So you get the wrong requirements in that case. But lack of detail as well. When you get to the developer level, I think you see lack of detail where it's things like, how do I validate? You know, and say, we didn't mention, there's this really complex validation rule that you have to put in, or somebody's saying, we're going to capture client details here, and you say, that's great, and you perhaps estimate client details, you don't know the detailed fields, but then they say, we're going to have a picture of the person, and we're going to have a video uploaded of the person speaking so that they can do a wee introduction to themselves, or whatever. I say, we didn't estimate that, you know, so people also making assumptions on what requirements mean. I really cannot emphasize enough getting the detail right. So there's quite a lot of different reasons for requirements failing, but the biggest one for me is people missing things rather than getting them wrong in the first place. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for your time, folks. Appreciate it. Thank you.